The sun was just climbing over the buildings when Keanu Reeves stepped out of his temporary apartment in Vancouver. The crisp morning air filled his lungs as he zipped up his jacket and started his daily walk to the film set. He could have taken a car service the studio had offered, but these morning walks helped clear his head before a long day of filming. Vancouver in the fall had a special kind of beauty. The maple trees lining the streets were turning golden and red, and the air had that distinct smell of leaves and earth. Keanu pulled his baseball cap lower over his eyes, not really to hide who he was, but more out of habit. After decades in the spotlight, he had learned to move through the world with a certain quietness. He stopped at the same coffee shop he visited every morning, a small place tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop. The bell above, the door jingled as he entered. "The usual?" asked the barista, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes who had stopped being starstruck around his third visit. "Yes, please." Keanu nodded with a smile. "How's your son doing with his college applications?" The barista's face lit up. "He just heard back from his top choice yesterday. They want him for the spring semester." "That's excellent," Keanu said, genuinely happy for her. These small connections, these tiny threads of real life, kept him grounded in a world that often tried to place him on a pedestal. Coffee in hand, he continued his journey. The walk to the set took exactly 22 minutes at his natural pace. He knew because he'd timed it, not out of any particular need to be precise, but because knowing gave him comfort. Small routines in a life that was anything but routine. He approached the corner of Maple and 4th, he felt himself picking up pace slightly. For the past 8 months, this corner had become a special part of his day. Not because of any remarkable landmark, but because of who waited there. And there, she was right on time, a young girl, maybe 12 years old, standing with her mother. Sophia was her name, and unlike many fans, she never rushed at him or asked for selfies to post online. Instead, she simply waited, a respectful distance away, ready with a wave and a smile. "Good morning, Mr. Reeves," she called out, her voice carrying across the quiet street. "Good morning, Sophia," he replied, crossing over to where she stood. "And good morning, Elena." The girl's mother smiled warmly. "She insisted on getting here 5 minutes early today. Wouldn't want to miss you." Keanu noticed Sophia looked a little paler than usual, but her smile was as bright as ever. He had learned months ago about her condition, an autoimmune disorder that often left her tired and sometimes kept her homebound for days. But on her good days, she made it to this corner, rain or shine. "How are you feeling today?" he asked, crouching slightly to meet her eyes. "Better than yesterday," she answered with the straightforward honesty of a child. "The doctor gave me new medicine that doesn't make me feel as sick." "That's good to hear," Keanu said, nodding. "New medicine can make all the difference." "I drew something for you," Sophia said, suddenly shy as she pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. Keanu accepted the drawing with both hands, a gesture of respect he'd picked up during his travels. He unfolded it carefully to reveal a surprisingly detailed sketch of a motorcycle. Not just any motorcycle, but one that looked remarkably like his own arch motorcycle. "I looked up pictures online," she explained quickly. "Mom said you like motorcycles." "This is amazing," he said, genuinely impressed by her talent. "You've got real skill, Sophia. The details on the engine are spot on." The girl beamed under his praise, standing a little taller despite her fragile frame. "We don't want to keep you," Elena said, checking her watch. "I know you have to get to work." "Never too busy for good art," Keanu replied, carefully folding the drawing and tucking it into his jacket pocket right over his heart. "I'll add it to my collection." And he meant it. Back in his apartment in a leather portfolio he'd brought with him from Los Angeles, he kept every drawing Sophia had given him over the months. There weren't many. She didn't give him something every day, which made each one special. "What scene are you filming today?" Sophia asked, her eyes bright with interest. She never asked for spoilers about the movie, just about his day. "Some pretty intense stuff," he answered. "Lots of dialogue to remember." "You'll do great," she said with complete confidence. "You always do." This simple faith, this pure belief in him, not as a movie star but as a person trying his best. It touched something in Keanu that he couldn't quite explain. They chatted for a few more minutes about nothing important. The changing leaves, a dog that had passed by earlier wearing a sweater, how Sophia's science project was coming along. Just normal, everyday things that had nothing to do with fame or movies or illness. I should get going, Keanu finally said, glancing at his watch. Big day ahead? We'll see you tomorrow, Elena said, the same thing she said every morning. I'll be here, Sophia added with a little wave. As Keanu walked away, he felt that familiar warmth in his chest. These brief morning encounters had become something he looked forward to each day. In an industry where connections often came with strings attached, this simple friendship asked nothing of him except to be himself. The film crew had noticed the change in him over the months. His assistant had once commented that he seemed more centered on the days when he walked to work rather than took a car. The director had mentioned that he carried a certain lightness into the first scenes of the day. None of them knew about Sophia, not because Keanu was hiding her, but because some things felt too personal, too genuine to share casually. He didn't tell them about the girl who waited on the corner just to wish him a good day. He didn't mention how her strength in the face of her illness humbled him. He kept to himself how her simple, honest friendship had become an anchor in the swirling chaos that often surrounded his life. As he reached the set and greeted the security guard at the gate, Keanu carefully took the drawing from his pocket and smoothed it out. The motorcycle looked back at him, each pencil line drawn with care and attention. He smiled to himself before tucking it back safely away. Tomorrow, he would walk the same route. Tomorrow, he would stop at the same coffee shop. Tomorrow, he would look forward to seeing a young girl and her mother waiting on a corner, asking nothing from him but a moment of real connection, and in a life that had seen its share of loss and loneliness. These small, real moments were the ones Keanu treasured most. The morning ritual had started by accident. Sophia and her mother, Elena, had been waiting for the bus when Keanu walked by that first time. Sophia, despite her weakness from a recent treatment, had gathered her courage to wave at him. To everyone's surprise, especially Elena's, Keanu had stopped, smiled, and wished them a good morning. The next day, they arrived at the bus stop a few minutes early, hoping to see him again. When he appeared walking the same route at almost the exact same time, Sophia's face had lit up like a holiday display. That second meeting could have been the end of it, a nice story to tell friends about meeting a famous actor twice. But then came the third day, and the fourth. And soon it wasn't about meeting a celebrity anymore. It was about seeing a friend. Today marked 8 months of these morning exchanges. The seasons had changed around them, from winter's biting cold to spring's fresh bloom, through summer's heat and now into fall's golden glow. Through it all, their corner meetings had continued, weather permitting. Keanu stepped out of his apartment building, checking his watch. He had woken up earlier than usual, feeling oddly restless. The morning air had a bite to it, promising a chilly day ahead. He zipped his jacket all the way up and set off toward his usual coffee shop. "Morning, Mr. Reeves," called the owner, already preparing Keanu's regular order. "You're early today." "Couldn't sleep," Keanu replied with a shrug. "Thought I might as well get a head start." "Well, the early bird gets the worm, as they say." The owner handed him a paper cup filled with steaming coffee. "And here's something new we're trying. Hot chocolate with a hint of cinnamon. On the house. Thought your young friend might like it." Keanu looked at the second cup in surprise. "That's very thoughtful of you." The owner waved away his thanks. "That girl's got spirit. My nephew has something similar. Not the same condition, but he's been in and out of hospitals since he was little. Kids like that, they appreciate the small things more than most adults ever will." Nodding in agreement, Keanu carefully took both cups and headed out into the morning. The sky was beginning to lighten, painting the clouds in shades of pink and gold. He walked a little faster than usual, knowing he was ahead of schedule but somehow eager to reach the corner of Maple and 4th. When he arrived, the spot was empty. Of course it was. He was nearly 20 minutes early. Keanu found a nearby bench and sat down, balancing the 2 cups carefully beside him. He pulled out his phone to check his messages while he waited. A few minutes later, he heard familiar voices and looked up to see Sophia and Elena approaching. Sophia was using her walking stick today, a bad sign. Her good days were when she could manage without it. "You're early," Sophia called out, her face brightening despite the obvious tiredness in her eyes. "So are you," Keanu replied, standing up and lifting the cups. "I brought you something." Elena gave him a grateful smile as Sophia accepted the hot chocolate. "You didn't have to do that." "I didn't. The coffee shop owner did. He said to tell you it has cinnamon in it." Sophia took a careful sip and her eyes widened. "It's so good. Mom, you have to try this." As Elena took a small taste from her daughter's cup, Keanu noticed the dark circles under her eyes. "Rough night?" he asked quietly while Sophia was distracted by her drink. Elena nodded slightly. "Her pain was pretty bad yesterday. The new medication helps, but there are still bad days." Keanu's face showed genuine concern. Over the months, he had learned to read between the lines of Elena's carefully chosen words. As a single mother managing her daughter's chronic illness while working full-time as a nurse, she carried an enormous burden. Yet she never complained, never asked for help, and certainly never hinted that Keanu, with all his resources, might ease some of that burden. He respected her pride, but wished she would let him do more. The one time he had suggested helping with medical costs, she had firmly but kindly refused. "We manage," she had said simply, and that was the end of it. "I brought you something too," Sophia said, pulling him back to the present moment. From her backpack, she withdrew a book. "It's about stars and space. I finished reading it yesterday, and I thought you might like it because of that movie you were in." Keanu accepted the book, a well-worn copy of A Guide to the Night Sky. "This looks fascinating. Are you sure you want to part with it?" Sophia nodded earnestly. "I've read it 3 times already. Besides, it's not giving it away if you're lending it to a friend." Friend. The word hung in the air, simple yet profound. To this child, he wasn't Keanu Reeves the actor, the meme, the celebrity. He was just Keanu, the man who stopped to talk to her every morning. "I'll take good care of it," he promised, tucking the book into his bag. "And I'll return it when I'm done." "No rush," Sophia said, then turned to her mother. "Can I tell him about the art thing?" Elena nodded, a hint of pride breaking through her tired expression. "My art teacher entered one of my drawings in a citywide contest," Sophia explained, her voice picking up speed with excitement. "And I'm one of the finalists. There's going to be a real exhibition at the community center next month with all the finalists' work displayed." "That's incredible," Keanu said, genuinely impressed. "Which drawing was it?" "The one of the old tree in the park. You know, the one I showed you a few weeks ago." Keanu remembered it well. A gnarled oak tree rendered with surprising depth and emotion for an artist so young. They made the right choice. That was an exceptional piece. "Will you come?" Sophia asked, then quickly added, "I mean, if you're still filming here then. I know you're busy." Before Keanu could answer, Elena gently intervened. "Honey, Mr. Reeves has a very tight schedule. We can't expect him to—" "I'll be there," Keanu interrupted softly. "Just let me know when and where." The joy that spread across Sophia's face was worth any schedule adjustment he might need to make. Some things were simply more important than filming schedules. They talked a little longer than usual that morning. Sophia told him about her art teacher, how the woman had been teaching for 40 years and rarely entered students' work in contests, which made the selection even more special. Elena mentioned that Sophia's doctor was cautiously optimistic about her response to the new treatment. Keanu shared a funny story about a scene they'd filmed the previous day, where the director's coffee had been accidentally switched with a prop cup of colored water. As they talked, people passed by on their way to work or school. A few did double takes upon recognizing Keanu, but most simply smiled at the sight of a man chatting amicably with a mother and her daughter on a street corner. There was something so ordinary, so human about the scene that it seemed to discourage interruption. Eventually, Keanu checked his watch and sighed. "I should get going. Early call time today." "Thanks for the hot chocolate," Sophia said, holding up her now empty cup. It was the best I've ever had. I'll pass that along to the coffee shop owner, Keanu promised. He'll be pleased. As he turned to leave, Elena touched his arm lightly. Thank you, she said quietly, and he knew she wasn't. Talking about the drink. See you tomorrow, he replied with a nod. Same time, same place, Sophia called after him, a phrase that had become their parting ritual. As Keanu walked toward the film set, he realized he was carrying himself differently. The crew would notice it again today, that inexplicable lightness in his step, the readiness in his smile. His assistant would attribute it to good sleep or perhaps a satisfying workout. The director would simply be grateful for his positive energy. None of them needed to know about the real source of that energy. A brief conversation on a street corner, a borrowed book about stars, and the genuine excitement of a young artist, getting her first recognition. These small moments of connection were private treasures, reminders of what truly mattered in a world that often confused fame with importance and wealth with worth. When he reached the set, Keanu carefully placed Sophia's book in his trailer, making a mental note to start reading it that evening. Then he headed to makeup, ready to become someone else for the cameras. But part of him remained at that street corner, holding a cooling cup of coffee, listening to a young girl's dreams, and feeling, for those few precious minutes, like just another human being sharing a moment of real connection in a complicated world. Tuesday mornings on set were typically quieter than other days of the week. The weekend's energy had fully dissipated, and the midweek rush hadn't yet begun. Keanu liked Tuesdays for this reason. They had a steady, focused rhythm to them. This particular Tuesday started like any other. He woke before his alarm, did his usual stretches to work out the stiffness in his back from yesterday's stunt work, and got dressed in comfortable layers. The apartment the studio had rented for him during filming was nice but felt temporary, as all such places did. Still, he'd added a few personal touches, books on the nightstand, a small plant on the windowsill, and Sophia's drawings carefully arranged on the refrigerator door. He patted his jacket pocket, making sure he had his phone and wallet, then headed out. The morning air hit him with unexpected crispness. Fall was definitely settling in, the leaves now more orange than yellow, some already gathering in drifts along the curb. At the coffee shop, he ordered his usual, then paused. And a hot chocolate with cinnamon, please. To go. The owner nodded, knowingly. Your young friend liked it then? Said it was the best she'd ever had, Keanu replied with a small smile. Glad to hear it. I'll throw in one of our oatmeal cookies too. Just baked them this morning. Keanu thanked him and left a generous tip, as he always did. Small businesses were the backbone of any community, and he believed in supporting them. Plus, the owner never made a fuss about who he was, never asked for pictures or autographs, just treated him like any other regular customer. That kind of normalcy was worth its weight in gold. With his coffee in one hand and the hot chocolate and cookie bag in the other, Keanu made his way toward the now familiar corner of Maple and 4th. The sun was breaking through the clouds, casting long shadows across the street. A good day for filming outdoor scenes, he thought absently. As he approached the corner, he felt something off before he could even articulate what was wrong. The space was empty. No Sophia. No Elena. Just an ordinary street corner with people passing by heading to work or school. Keanu stopped, checked his watch. 7:48 a.m. He was right on time, maybe even a minute early. They were always here by 7:45. Maybe they're running late, he thought, moving to the side of the walkway to wait. He took a sip of his coffee and glanced up and down the street, expecting to see them hurrying toward him any second. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. People continued to stream past him, a few with recognizing glances, but most lost in their own morning thoughts. The hot chocolate in his hand was cooling rapidly. This had never happened before, not once in 8 months. Even on days when Sophia was too ill to come herself, Elena would still be there, waiting to give him updates and accept his well wishes, to pass along. At 8:05, Keanu pulled out his phone and checked for messages, though he didn't actually have Elena's number. Why had he never asked for it? It seemed like such an obvious oversight now. A strange feeling was growing in his chest, a tightness that had nothing to do with the cooling air. Something was wrong. He couldn't explain how he knew, but the certainty was settling into his bones. With each passing minute, he should probably head to the set. They were filming important scenes today, and the whole production was on a tight schedule. Being late would impact dozens of people's work, yet he couldn't make himself move. The image of Sophia's pale face from yesterday morning kept floating into his mind. She'd been using her walking stick. Elena had mentioned a rough night with pain. Before he could second-guess himself, Keanu pulled out his phone again and called his assistant. "Morning, boss," came the cheerful voice. "I'm already on set. They're setting up the first shot now." "I need a favor," Keanu said quietly. "Can you tell them I'm running about an hour behind? Family emergency." There was a brief pause. His assistant knew he had no family in Vancouver. "Everything okay?" "I'm not sure," Keanu answered honestly. "I just need to check on something. I'll be there as soon as I can." "Don't worry about it. I'll handle everything here. Take the time you need." Keanu thanked him and hung up. Then he stood for a moment thinking. Sophia had mentioned her address once when telling him about a power outage in her neighborhood. What was it? He closed his eyes, trying to remember. Pine Street? No. Cedar Avenue. A small apartment building with a green door, she'd said. Number 423 if he was remembering correctly. It wasn't far from here, maybe a 10-minute walk in the opposite direction from the studio. Without letting himself overthink it, Keanu set off, still carrying the now cold hot chocolate and the small paper bag with the cookie. Cedar Avenue was quieter than the main roads, lined with a mix of older apartment buildings and small houses. Keanu walked slowly, checking the numbers on each building until he found 423, a 3-story brick building with a faded green door, just as Sophia had described. Now that he was here, doubt crept in. What exactly was he doing? Showing up unannounced. At their home seemed invasive, possibly even inappropriate. They might simply have had a schedule change. Maybe Sophia had a doctor's appointment. Maybe they'd simply overslept. But that feeling in his gut wouldn't go away. Something was wrong. He approached the building and checked the names by the buzzers. There it was, E. Rodriguez 2B. He hesitated, then pressed the button. No response. He tried again, holding it a little longer this time. Still nothing. Keanu stepped back, looking up at the second-floor windows, trying to guess which ones might belong to apartment 2B. As he stood there, the front door opened, and an elderly man stepped out, struggling slightly with a large recycling bin. "Let me help you with that," Keanu offered, quickly moving to hold the door and then taking the bin. "Thank you, young man," the older gentleman said, clearly not recognizing him beneath his cap. "These things get heavier every week, I swear." "Where would you like it?" Keanu asked. "Just by the curb there, if you don't mind." After placing the bin where indicated, Keanu turned back to the man. "Actually, I'm trying to reach someone in apartment 2B, Elena Rodriguez and her daughter. I'm a friend and I'm a bit worried because they weren't at our usual meeting spot this morning." The old man's face changed. "You're here about Elena and little Sophia. Are you a relative?" "A friend," Keanu repeated. "Is everything okay?" Debo. Man glanced back at the building. "I'm the super here, name's George. Elena called me around 5 a.m., frantic because her car wouldn't start. Said something about Sophia being very ill and needing to get to the hospital, but she couldn't afford an ambulance." Keanu's heart sank. "What happened? Did they get to the hospital?" "I tried to help with the car, but it's the starter motor. Needs replacing entirely. By the time I figured that out, Elena was trying to reach friends for a ride. I offered to call a taxi, but she was worried about the cost. I had to get back to my wife. She's not well either, so I don't know what happened after that." "Which hospital would they go to?" Keanu asked urgently. "St. Michael's, most likely. It's where Sophia's specialist is, from what Elena's told me." "Thank you," Keanu said, already turning to leave. "You've been very helpful." "Wait," George called, after him. "If you see them, tell Elena not to worry about this month's rent being late. I told her that yesterday, but I don't think she heard me with everything going on. Keanu nodded, a lump forming in his throat at the casual mention of financial struggle. I'll tell her. He quickly walked back to the main road and hailed a taxi, something he rarely did in Vancouver. St. Michael's Hospital, please, as fast as you can. The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror, eyes widening slightly in recognition, but thankfully said nothing beyond, "Yes, sir." During the drive, Keanu stared out the window, still holding the now cold cup of hot chocolate and the small, paper bag. He felt oddly reluctant to let them go, as if they represented some kind of promise he needed to keep. His mind was racing. What if he was overreacting? What if this was simply a routine hospital visit that Elena had forgotten to mention? But deep down, he knew better. The superintendent's worried face, the mention of a 5 a.m. emergency, the fact that Elena had never before broken their morning routine, all pointed to something serious. When they arrived at the hospital, Keanu paid the driver and hurried inside to the main reception desk. A tired-looking woman looked up as he approached. "I'm looking for Sofia Rodriguez," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "She would have been admitted early this morning." The receptionist typed something into her computer. "Are you family?" Keanu hesitated. "A close friend of the family. Her mother, Elena, is expecting me." It wasn't exactly a lie. She would be expecting him, just not here. The woman looked at him for a long moment, recognition dawning in her eyes. Then she glanced back at her screen. "She's in pediatric intensive care, 5th floor, but only family is allowed to visit at this time." "Please," Keanu said quietly. "I need to know if they're okay." Something in his voice must have conveyed his genuine concern, because the receptionist's expression softened. "5th floor, North Wing. Talk to the nurses there." "Thank you," he said sincerely, already moving toward the elevators. The pediatric ward was painted in bright colors, with murals of forests and animals covering the walls, a stark contrast to the serious work being done inside. Keanu approached the nurses' station, where a woman in blue scrubs was reviewing charts. "Excuse me," he said. "I'm looking for Sofia Rodriguez." The nurse looked up, her professional mask slipping momentarily as she recognized him. "Mr. Reeves?" "Yes," he acknowledged. "Sofia and her mother, Elena, are friends of mine. I understand Sofia was admitted early this morning." The nurse hesitated, clearly torn between hospital protocol and the unexpected situation of a famous actor appearing at her desk. "I just need to know if they're okay," Keanu added gently. "We meet every morning, and when they didn't show up today, I got worried." "Wait here, please," the nurse said, picking up a phone. Keanu stood quietly, still holding the cold hot chocolate and the cookie bag. A few minutes later, Elena appeared in the hallway, her face drawn with exhaustion and worry. When she saw Keanu, her eyes widened in disbelief. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You weren't at the corner," he said simply. "I was worried." Elena's composure cracked and tears filled her eyes. Without thinking, Keanu stepped forward and put an arm around her shoulders. "How is she?" he asked softly. "It's bad," Elena managed. "She spiked a very high fever overnight, and then she couldn't wake up properly. I couldn't get the car to start. And She broke off, struggling to maintain control. "What did the doctors say?" "They're running tests. Her condition can cause inflammation around the heart sometimes, and they think that might be happening. They're watching her closely." Keanu nodded, absorbing this information. "Is there anything I can do?" Elena shook her head, then paused. "Actually, just being here helps. I wasn't sure who to call. My parents are in Arizona, and most of my friends are from work, on shift right now." "Then I'll stay," Keanu said firmly. "As long as you need." He looked down at the item still in his hands and gave a sad smile. "I brought these for Sofia. The hot chocolate's cold now, and the cookies probably stale, but—" Elena took the small paper bag, a ghost of a smile crossing her face. "She'll love knowing you remembered when she wakes up." "Not if," Keanu noted. "When." The fierce hope in Elena's voice was both heartbreaking and inspiring. When she wakes up, he agreed. And then we'll get her a fresh hot chocolate. The coffee shop owner said it's her new special recipe. Elena wiped at her eyes. She talked about that hot chocolate all day yesterday. Said it was like drinking. A hug. They stood there in the hospital hallway, an unlikely pair brought together by care for a special young girl. And as nurses bustled past and monitors beeped in distant rooms, Keanu knew with absolute certainty that his instinct had been right. This was exactly where he needed to be. The pediatric waiting room was painted in cheerful yellows and blues, with cartoon animals dancing across the walls. The chairs were comfortable enough for short stays but became instruments of torture after a few hours. Keanu shifted, trying to find a position that didn't aggravate his lower back. He'd been here for nearly 4 hours now. After their initial conversation in the hallway, Elena had been called back to Sophia's room for a consultation with the doctors. She'd invited Keanu to join, but he'd gently declined, feeling it wasn't his place to intrude on such a private moment. Instead, he promised to wait and handle any practical matters that might arise. His first call had been to his assistant, explaining that he wouldn't make it to set at all today. The production would have to rearrange the shooting schedule, focusing on scenes that didn't include his character. It would be inconvenient and potentially costly, but some things were more important than filming schedules or budget concerns. His second call had been to his driver, asking him to bring a few items to the hospital: a phone charger, some decent coffee from the shop they frequented, and food that didn't come from a vending machine. Now he sat, alternating between flipping through outdated magazines and watching the slow procession of parents, children, and medical staff through the waiting area. No one had recognized him yet, or if they had, they were respectful enough not to approach. The baseball cap and the 2-day stubble probably helped, as did the setting itself. People had more pressing concerns in a hospital than celebrity sightings. A young nurse approached, looking slightly hesitant. "Mr. Reeves? Ms. Rodriguez asked me to update you. The doctors are still running tests, but Sophia is stable for now. They've managed to bring her fever down." "Thank you," Keanu said sincerely. "Is there anything specific they need? Medical equipment specialists, anything like that?" The nurse looked uncomfortable. "I'm not really authorized to discuss those details." Keanu nodded, understanding her position. "Of course. Please just let Elena know I'm still here if she needs anything." As the nurse walked away, Keanu's phone buzzed. It was his driver, texting that he'd arrived with the requested items. Keanu went to meet him at the main entrance. "Thanks for doing this, Tom," he said, as the driver handed over a bag containing the items he'd asked for, plus a few extras. "No problem," Tom replied. "How's the little girl doing?" "Stable, they say. Still running tests." Tom nodded solemnly. "My nephew was in and out of hospitals his whole childhood. Tough on the whole family. You need anything else, just call." Keanu thanked him again and headed back inside, the simple human connection warming him more than the fresh coffee ever could. When he returned to the waiting area, Elena was there, looking around anxiously. Her face relaxed when she spotted him. "You're still here," she said, sounding both surprised and grateful. "I said I would be," Keanu replied simply, handing her one of the coffee cups. "How is she?" Elena accepted the coffee with murmured thanks. "Better than a few hours ago. The fever's down and she's more responsive. They're still concerned about her heart, though. The inflammation is putting strain on it." They sat side by side, sipping their coffee in silence for a moment. "I can't believe you found us," Elena finally said. "How did you even know where to look?" Keanu shrugged slightly. "Sophia mentioned your address once when she was telling me about the power outage in your neighborhood. I remembered the building, with the green door. The superintendent told me what happened with your car." Elena closed her eyes briefly. "George is a good man. He tried so hard to get that old car started. He also wanted me to tell you not to worry about the rent being late this month." A faint smile crossed Elena's tired face. "He's been telling me that for 3 days. I keep saying we'll manage, but he worries." There was that phrase again. "We'll manage." Keanu had heard it from her several times over the months, always said with quiet dignity whenever the subject of their financial situation arose indirectly. He respected her pride, but couldn't help wondering if now might be different. Elena, he began carefully. I know we don't really talk about this, but if there's anything, any expenses, specialists, whatever Sophia needs, please let me help. She stiffened slightly, the familiar wall going up. We're okay. The hospital has a good financial assistance program, and my insurance covers most. I know you can handle it, Keanu interrupted gently. That's not what I'm saying, it's just, I care about Sophia. And you. If I can make things even a little bit easier, why wouldn't I? Elena studied her coffee cup intently. Because it changes things. Right now we're just friends who meet on a street corner. Normal people having normal conversations. Keanu understood immediately. Their relationship existed in a unique space, not quite casual acquaintances, but not close enough for financial entanglements. And with his wealth and fame, any money changing hands would inevitably shift the power dynamic. I get it, he said quietly. And I respect that. But the offer stands, no strings attached, not because of who I am, but because that's what friends do when they can. Elena nodded, neither accepting nor rejecting, and they lapsed into comfortable silence again. A doctor appeared at the waiting room entrance, scanning the space until her eyes landed on Elena. Ms. Rodriguez, may I speak with you? Elena stood immediately, her body tense. This is a family friend, she said, gesturing to Keanu. He can hear whatever you have to say. The doctor, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, glanced at Keanu without a flicker of recognition. Her focus was entirely professional. We've completed Sophia's tests, she said. The good news is that we've identified the source of the problem. The inflammation around her heart is significant but treatable. We need to start her on a course of high-dose anti-inflammatories immediately. And the bad news? Elena asked, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. The medication we need to use is very powerful. It will suppress her immune system even further, which means she'll need to stay in the hospital for at least a week, possibly longer, in a controlled environment, and there may be side effects we'll need to monitor closely. Elena nodded, absorbing this information. When do you start the treatment? We'd like to begin right away. The sooner we address the inflammation, the less chance of permanent damage to her heart. Do it, Elena said without hesitation. Whatever she needs. The doctor gave a reassuring smile. She's in good hands. We've dealt with cases like hers before, and the success rate with this treatment is high. She's also got youth and spirit on her side. Both powerful medicines in their own right. Can I see her now? Elena asked. Of course. She's asking for you. She's also asking about someone named Keanu, wondering if he's angry that she missed their meeting. Elena gave a strangled laugh that was half sob. That would be him, she said, nodding toward Keanu. The doctor's professional mask slipped for just a moment as she took a second, more careful look at him. Oh, I see. Well, family. Only in the ICU, but... She glanced around, then lowered her voice. If you come back with Ms. Rodriguez, I don't think anyone will question it. Just keep the visit brief, please. Keanu looked to Elena, silently asking if she wanted him to come. She nodded, relief visible in her expression. They followed the doctor, through a series of corridors and security doors until they reached the pediatric intensive care unit. The space was quieter than the regular ward, with soft beeping from monitors and the hushed voices of medical staff the only sounds. Sophia's room was small but private, filled with machines that dwarfed her slight frame. Despite the tubes and wires connected to her, she looked better than Keanu had feared, pale but alert, her eyes brightening when she saw them enter. Mom, and Keanu, you're both here. Her voice was weak but unmistakably excited. Elena rushed to her daughter's side, taking her hand carefully to avoid disturbing the IV line. Of course we're here, baby. How are you feeling? Tired. And my chest hurts, but Dr. Patel says they're going to fix that. Sophia's gaze shifted to Keanu, suddenly anxious. I'm sorry I missed our meeting this morning. I tried to tell Mom we needed to call you, but then I got really dizzy and everything went kind of blurry. Hey, don't worry about that, Keanu said, moving closer to the bed. I'm just glad I found you. Sophia's eyes widened. You came looking for us? When you weren't at our corner, I knew something must be wrong, so I tracked you down. Like a detective, Sophia said with a weak smile. Exactly like a detective, Keanu agreed, returning her smile. Elementary, my dear Sophia. She giggled at that, then winced slightly, her hand moving to her chest. Easy there, Elena murmured. Deep breaths, remember? The doctor, who had been checking Sophia's monitors, spoke up. We should start the treatment now. You can visit again in a few hours when she's settled. Sophia looked alarmed. Do you have to go? Just for a little while, Elena assured her. The doctors need to give you medicine and then you need to rest. I'll be right outside the whole time. Promise? Promise. Sophia turned to Keanu. Will you come back too? Wild horses couldn't keep me away, he said solemnly, which earned him another small smile. As they prepared to leave, Sophia called out, Keanu, that hot chocolate yesterday was amazing. Could you thank the coffee shop person for me? I will, he promised, touched that she would think of such a thing in her current state. Back in the waiting area, Elena sank into a chair, the brief moment of strength she'd maintained for Sophia's benefit evaporating. Keanu sat beside her, offering silent support. The doctor seemed optimistic, he said after a while. Elena nodded. Dr. Patel has been Sophia's specialist since she was diagnosed 3 years ago. She doesn't sugarcoat things. If she says the treatment has a good chance of working, I believe her. 3 years, Sophia would have been 9 when it started, Elena confirmed. Just a normal kid, and then suddenly she wasn't. The early days were the hardest. All the unknown, the tests, watching her struggle with pain and fatigue when she should have been riding bikes and going to sleepovers. Keanu listened, understanding that Elena needed to talk to process. But kids adapt, she continued. They find new normals. Sophia discovered art when she was too sick for school but needed something to keep her mind occupied. Now I can't imagine her without a sketchbook in her hands. She's incredibly talented, Keanu agreed. That tree drawing that got selected for the exhibition, it had real emotion in it. Elena smiled proudly. She sees things differently than most people, maybe because she's had to sit and observe more than participate. I don't know. They talked for another hour about Sophia, about Elena's work as a nurse, about Keanu's experiences on various film sets. Normal conversation that helped distract from the worry and the sterile hospital environment. Eventually, Keanu's phone buzzed with a message from his assistant asking for an update. I should make a few calls, he said, standing. Production stuff. Elena looked stricken. I completely forgot about your filming schedule. You must be missing important scenes. Keanu waved away her concern. Nothing that can't be rearranged. The director's a good guy. He understands emergencies. Still, I feel terrible about disrupting your work. Don't, Keanu said firmly. Some things are more important than movies. This is one of them. As he stepped away to make his calls, Keanu realized he meant every word. In an industry built on illusion and artifice, this, a child's illness, a mother's worry, the simple human connection of caring about what happened to others, was real in a way that most of his daily life wasn't. And in that moment of clarity, standing in a hospital corridor with the sounds of medical equipment and hushed conversations around him, Keanu felt more grounded than he had in years. Whatever schedule changes or production costs his absence today incurred were insignificant compared to being here, being present, being human. He made his calls quickly and returned to find Elena speaking with Dr. Patel again. The treatment has started, the doctor was saying. She's resting comfortably now. The next 24 hours will tell us a lot about how she's responding. Can I stay with her tonight? Elena asked. Of course. There's a recliner in her room that converts to a small bed. Not the most comfortable, but better than these waiting room chairs. I'll bring you some things from your apartment, Keanu offered. Whatever you need for an overnight stay. Elena looked like she might protest, then simply nodded. Thank you. That would be a huge help. Dr. Patel glanced between them with a hint of curiosity but maintained her professional demeanor. Sophia's lucky to have such a strong support system. After the doctor left, Elena wrote down her apartment key location under a flower pot by the door and a short list of items she needed. The building superintendent, George, can let you in if you have trouble with the key. I'll handle it, Keanu assured her. You focus on Sophia. As he prepared to leave, Elena caught his arm. Keanu, what you said earlier about helping with expenses. She paused, visibly struggling with her pride. If the offer still stands, there's a specialist in Boston that Dr. Patel has mentioned before. Someone who's had success with difficult cases like Sophia's. My insurance won't cover consulting with doctors outside our network, but consider it done, Keanu said simply. Just tell Dr. Patel to make the arrangements. No strings, no repayment, nothing to change our friendship. Just one human helping another because they can. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, relief and gratitude in her expression. Thank you. That's what friends do, Keanu replied, echoing his earlier words. I'll be back soon with your things. As he walked through the hospital corridors toward the exit, Keanu felt a complex mix of emotions, concern for Sophia, admiration for Elena's strength, and a deep sense of purpose that had nothing to do with cameras or scripts or fame. Sometimes the most important roles we play aren't on any screen. They're the ones we step into when someone needs us, when our instincts tell us something isn't right, when we choose connection over convenience. And in those moments, we're not acting at all. We're simply being human. 6 weeks had passed since that frightening morning when Sophia had been rushed to the hospital. The autumn leaves had fallen, and the first hints of winter were in the air. Vancouver's streets glistened with recent rain, and holiday decorations had begun to appear in shop windows. Keanu walked his now familiar route, coffee in hand. The past weeks had been a roller coaster of emotions and adjustments. Production on the film had managed to work around his unexpected absence that first day, shooting scenes that didn't require his character. When he returned to set the following day, the director had simply asked if everything was okay, accepted his brief explanation about a friend's health emergency, and moved on. No drama, no fuss, just professionals adapting to circumstances. Sophia had remained in the hospital for 9 days. The treatment had worked, gradually reducing the inflammation around her heart, but the recovery was slow. Throughout her stay, Keanu had visited daily, sometimes just for a few minutes between, filming sometimes for hours when the production schedule allowed. He'd brought her art supplies, books, and once, with the doctor's permission, a chocolate milkshake that had made her eyes light up like it was Christmas morning. They'd played card games, talked about movies, and sometimes just sat quietly while she sketched and he read scripts. Elena had been there constantly, taking leave from her nursing job to stay by her daughter's side. The hospital staff, recognizing a fellow healthcare worker in need, had been exceptionally accommodating, bringing her extra blankets for the uncomfortable, recliner, and saving meal trays for her when she missed the regular meal service. As promised, Keanu had arranged for the specialist from Boston to consult on Sophia's case. Dr. Patel had been thrilled with the opportunity to collaborate with her esteemed colleague, and together, they had refined Sophia's treatment plan. The new approach seemed to be working. Her energy levels had improved, and she'd had no further cardiac episodes. Now, as Keanu approached the corner of Maple and 4th, he smiled at the sight that greeted him. Sophia and Elena were waiting, bundled up against the morning chill. It was their third meeting since Sophia had been cleared to resume limited normal activities, and each time she looked a little stronger, a little more like her old self. "Good morning," he called as he approached. "Morning," Sophia replied brightly, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. She was still using her walking stick, but she leaned on it less heavily than before. "How's our art celebrity today?" Keanu asked, handing her the now customary hot chocolate with cinnamon. Sophia rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her pleased smile. "I'm hardly a celebrity. It was just a small exhibition." "That she won," Elena added proudly. "Don't forget that part." The community center exhibition had happened during Sophia's hospital stay. Unable to attend, she'd been devastated until the organizers, hearing of her situation, brought the exhibition to her, or at least a portion of it. They'd mounted her drawing in the hospital's sunroom and set up a small ceremony there, complete with the blue ribbon her work had earned. Keanu had filmed the whole thing on his phone so she could watch it again later. "The ribbon is hanging in my room now," Sophia said, "right next to the bookshelf." "As it should be," Keanu nodded seriously. "The first of many, I'm sure." They fell into their comfortable routine of morning conversation. Sophia told him about the online classes she'd been taking during her recovery, her excitement about returning to regular school next week, and her plans for new art projects. Elena was quieter than usual, Keanu noticed. Not withdrawn exactly, but thoughtful. "Everything okay?" he asked when Sophia was briefly distracted by a dog passing by. Elena nodded. "Just thinking about changes. Good ones, mostly." Before he could ask what she meant, Sophia rejoined the conversation. "Mom got a promotion at the hospital. She's going to be the new pediatric ward nursing supervisor." "That's fantastic," Keanu said sincerely. "Congratulations." Elena smiled, a hint of color in her cheeks. "It's a big responsibility, but it comes with better hours and, well, better pay. Plus, I'll be working with kids like Sophia, which feels right somehow." "They couldn't have chosen better," Keanu said. "After watching you with Sophia in the hospital, I can't imagine anyone more qualified." "Speaking of changes," Sophia interjected, "when does filming finish? You said it was soon, right?" A small pang went through Keanu's chest. "Next week, actually. Wednesday is the last day of shooting." "Oh." Sophia's face fell slightly before she masked it with a smile. "That's good, right? It means you completed the movie successfully." "It does," Keanu agreed. "But I'll miss our morning meetings." "Me too," Sophia said quietly. An awkward silence fell, the kind that happens when people avoid saying the harder thing, in this case, goodbye. Elena cleared her throat. "Actually, there was something I wanted to discuss with you, Keanu. A possibility, if you're interested." Both Keanu and Sophia looked at her curiously. The specialist from Boston has suggested a new treatment protocol for Sophia, one that's showing promising results in similar cases. It would mean regular appointments for the next 6 months, possibly longer. Keanu nodded encouragingly, not sure where this was leading, but ready to offer financial support again if needed. "We've been considering relocating there temporarily," Elena continued. "My new position comes with the option for a sabbatical for continuing education, which I could take at one of the Boston hospitals. And Sophia's school has a good remote learning program." "Boston sounds like a great place for both of you," Keanu said, ignoring the twinge of sadness at the thought of them moving even further away. "The thing is," Elena went on, seeming uncharacteristically hesitant, "I know you have a home in Massachusetts, not far from Boston. At least, that's what those celebrity real estate websites claim." Keanu raised an eyebrow, surprised that Elena had looked into this. "I do have a place there, yes. Would you be spending any time there in the coming months? Because if so, perhaps we could continue our morning meetings. Not daily, of course, but when schedules align." Sophia's eyes had widened with hope. "Could we? Really?" Keanu felt a rush of unexpected emotion. He did indeed have a home in Massachusetts, one he used sporadically between film projects. He'd been planning to spend some time there after this, film wrapped, working on a personal project and enjoying the relative quiet away from Hollywood. "I'll be there for at least 3 months starting in December," he said. "Working on a book, actually." "You're writing a book?" Sophia asked, clearly delighted by this new information. "Trying to," Keanu admitted with a self-deprecating smile. "It's slow going." "What's it about?" she pressed. "It's a kind of illustrated philosophy book. Thoughts about life, connections, finding meaning." Sounds pretentious when I say it out loud. "It doesn't," Elena assured him. "It sounds exactly like something you'd write." Keanu looked between them. These two people who had unexpectedly become important fixtures in his life. "I would very much like to continue our meetings in Massachusetts. There's a great little bakery near my place that makes incredible hot chocolate." Not quite as good as our coffee shop here, but close. Sophia beamed. I'll be the judge of that. They spent the next few minutes discussing logistics, when they'd be arriving in Boston, where they'd be staying, a small apartment provided by the hospital, it turned out, how their schedules might align. It felt good, Keanu thought, to be planning for future meetings rather than saying goodbye. Oh, Sophia suddenly exclaimed. I almost forgot. She dug into her backpack and pulled out a flat, wrapped package. This is for you. An early going-away present, I guess, except now it's not really goodbye. Keanu accepted the package, carefully unwrapping it to reveal a framed drawing. It showed the three of them, Keanu, Sophia, and Elena, standing at their familiar street corner. The detail was remarkable, from the coffee cup in his hand to the particular way Elena always adjusted her scarf. But what struck him most was the way Sophia had captured their expressions, the open warmth, the genuine connection between three people who had started as strangers and become something more. Sophia, this is... He paused, genuinely moved. This is one of the best gifts I've ever received. Look at the title, she urged, pointing to the small card mounted beneath the drawing. In careful lettering she had written, The Day We Met, and Every Day After. It's perfect, Keanu said softly. Thank you. You're welcome, Sophia replied. Just promise you'll hang it somewhere you can see it. As a reminder. A reminder? That sometimes the best parts of life are the unplanned ones. The random meetings, the unexpected friendships. Keanu nodded, once again struck by the wisdom that sometimes emerged from this young girl. I promise. They talked a little longer, making more concrete plans for Massachusetts. Keanu suggested a few places they might visit, museums with excellent art programs, a nature reserve with accessible trails, a small theater that showed classic films on Sunday afternoons. Sophia soaked it all in eagerly, while Elena watched. With a smile, her earlier pensiveness replaced by quiet contentment. Eventually, Keanu glanced at his watch. I should get to the set. Big scene today. The one with the explosion? Sophia asked excitedly. He'd been sharing broad outlines of the film with her, careful to avoid spoilers but giving her a sense of the filmmaking process. That's the one. Lots of special effects, so we'll probably be doing multiple takes. Break a leg, she said solemnly. That's what actors say to each other, right? Right, Keanu confirmed with a grin, though preferably not literally. As he prepared to leave, Elena touched his arm lightly. Thank you, she said quietly. For everything these past weeks. The specialist, the hospital bill, but mostly for just being there, for caring. You don't need to thank me for that, Keanu replied. Some connections just matter, more than fame or fortune or any of the things people think are important. Elena nodded in understanding. Still, not everyone would have followed their instinct that day. Not everyone would have come looking. I'm glad I did, Keanu said simply. See you tomorrow? Sophia asked, their traditional parting question. Same time, same place, Keanu confirmed, their traditional answer. As he walked away, cradling the framed drawing carefully against his chest, Keanu reflected on the strange and wonderful ways life sometimes unfolded. He had come to Vancouver to make a film, to tell a story written by someone else. But along the way, he had become part of a different story altogether, one without scripts or cameras, one that couldn't be wrapped up neatly in 2 hours of screen. Time. It was a story about connection, about listening to the quiet voice of instinct, about the kind of everyday heroism that rarely makes headlines, but changes lives nonetheless. It was about a girl who greeted him every day, and what happened on the day she didn't. The doctors had later confirmed what Elena suspected. Had Sophia arrived at the hospital even 30 minutes later that morning, the outcome could have been devastating. The swift intervention had quite literally saved her life. But Keanu knew that Sophia had saved something in him too. In a world that often felt increasingly disconnected, where fame created as many barriers as it opened doors, she had offered him something genuine. Friendship without agenda, connection without expectation. As he reached the studio gates, Keanu carefully placed the framed drawing in his bag, making sure it was secure. He would hang it in his Massachusetts home in a place where he could see it every day. A reminder, as Sophia had said, that the best parts of life are often the unplanned ones, the unexpected meetings, the instincts we choose to follow, and in an industry built on fiction, there was nothing more valuable than that simple, unscripted truth.